I scroll down on this. Oh,
Was there a clock there before? I don't know. It seemed like there used to be a clock.
all right. I call this meeting to order. May I get a roll call, please? Sorry about that. No problem at all. We just need that gavel.
I know. No more gavel.
Get rid of the gavel. I go get one out of Amazon.
Roll call for commissioners present. Commissioner Hannon.
Here.
Commissioner Koig.
Here.
Commissioner Marinelli.
Here.
Commissioner Gupta.
Here.
Commissioner Gall.
Here.
Commissioner Kleinbaum.
Present.
And Commissioner Gittens is absent.
Great. Thank you, Officer Lofstrom. Let's go to salute to the flag. Everybody stand. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Item D, approve order of agenda.
Make that motion.
I second the motion.
Roll call, are we good?
Commissioner Hannon.
Approve.
Commissioner Koig.
Approved.
Commissioner Marinelli.
Approved.
Commissioner Gupta.
Approve.
Commissioner Gall.
Approve.
Commissioner Kleinbaum.
Approved.
So approved. Officer Lostrom, no blue folder items, correct?
No blue folder items.
Thank you. Consent calendar, I'll just read the formality here. Item F, business items, except those formally noticed for public hearing or discussion, are assigned to the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar item be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion following oral communications. And just a quick question, subcommittee formation, would that be formed if any commissioners are interested at this time or toward the end of the meeting with referrals to staff?
I would say during the items for discussion or, yeah, referrals to staff.
Yes,
For
sir.
items and referrals to staff.
Okay.
And then the two items on the consent calendar are the affidavit of posting and the approval of minutes from March 2021.
Okay.
March 21, 2022.
Do I hear a motion to approve those two?
I make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
And a vote. Commissioner Hannon.
Abstain.
Commissioner Koig.
Aye.
Commissioner Marinelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta.
Aye.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Kleinbaum.
Aye.
So approved.
Great. So now we have excluded consent calendar items. Officer Lostrom, are there any excluded ones?
No excluded consent calendar items.
Thank you. Item H, public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to speak or comment on any subject that does not appear on this agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Officer Lostrom, are there any written non-agenda item comments, or does anybody from the public wish to approach?
There's no Zoom participants.
Okay.
No written requests in person. And no e-comments.
Thank you. Do I need a motion to close?
You can proceed with the next item.
Thank you. Items continued from previous agendas. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or action items on anything we discussed in the previous meeting or meetings? Motion to close item I.
You can proceed to J.
Thank you. Okay, items for discussion prior to action. And this would be J1 with City Manager Mike Witsanski. I believe there's a discussion today about social media and the upgraded city website. Go ahead, sir. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Good evening, everybody. Are we ready to go? Yeah, we're on here. Mike Witsanski, City Manager. It's nice to see you all. I made the rounds during the budget input gathering phase and wasn't able to time up with your particular schedule. So I've been talking to Commissioner Gall a little bit about maybe getting back in front of you to answer any questions you might have, give a brief presentation on state of the affairs. Don't have much to share with you today. I'd really rather listen to you all and really dive into whatever inquiries you might have individually. First, want to say thank you for your service. All of our commissions do great work in the community, and we're grateful for your time. And thank you for your interest in city affairs. So appreciate that. Budget was, from my account, very successful process. We had 82 different budget modifications that were ultimately approved by the City Council. Many of those items pertain to public safety in our community. We're very pleased with the changes that were made, and we're busy now implementing the various initiatives. Quality of life unit, dedicated sergeant position was affirmed as part of the budget. We're excited about that. That's one of our focal points with our police operations. Several of the folks in the audience here tonight have been working very diligently on that, and that's been going well. And then on the fire side in particular, we saw a lot of new initiatives, additional money for training operations, additional resources for our ladder truck, additional equipment resources that were provided. So really doing what we can to follow what we heard in the assessment and implement changes in the department that are accretive to operations. So really pleased with the changes that are happening there, and I think the department is responding very well. And of late, recently, we were actually announced as a Class 1 certified department here in the community, which is a very respectful distinction. It's a unique distinction. Very few agencies, Isaac could speak to this in greater detail, but very few agencies across the country are rated by ISO a Class 1 department, and we are. So that is a very positive item, and we will be bringing that organization in to speak to the council at a future meeting to talk a little bit about their process and what ultimately allowed us to elevate from a Class 2 standing to now a Class 1 department. So very rarefied air in the fire service area. So we're pleased with that, and we're going to do what we can to continue to sustain that success. So really busy budget season, and we're grateful that we're moving past that and now focusing on operations. But to answer your specific question, yes, one of the initiatives that wasn't only in the budget, but also is something that we have been working on through our strategic plan is to update the city's quite antiquated website. I think all of you have experienced that as residents, certainly as commissioners. It is tired, beyond tired, and in fact, it's now not even being supported by its original software developer. We've migrated it back to City Hall, where our IT folks are actually supporting the website for the time being while we go out for a strong request for proposal process. We have started with what we call an RFI, request for information from interested firms. We had 17 respondents, which was much bigger than I think we even expected. So right now, there's a city manager working group made up of experts in our community, volunteer citizens, and there's a subcommittee of the mayor and council that are working on parallel tracks to evaluate some of that RFI interest, along with our IT professionals and a staff member in the city manager's office, Luke Smoody, who are sifting that data and really trying to cull the list and determine, which of these groups we want to invite in for more formal presentation and response. So we're slowly working through that. It's one of the more important initiatives that we have going. Our department, our website is a major limiter for us operationally. I think it limits our ability to deliver service efficiently, whether it's at the building counter or it's a request for a business license renewal, you name it. We are very limited in what we can do online right now. We're trying to do more through modular, specific modules in different software providers, but the connectivity that needs to occur there, whether it's with our financial system, Munis, or the operating software and the operating department is really a challenge. So we're diligent and hoping to see major improvements there. And I think when we do update our website, we'll naturally be able to implement a more robust and modernized communications plan. That's a separate strategic planning effort where we're evaluating how we communicate with the public, how we focus our factual information, how we disseminate it through our social media platforms, and how it's ultimately organized and layered between our different departments. So all of that is under consideration. We're still in the early stages, so I can't tell you that we're going to see all of these changes in the next few months. It's going to be probably a better part of the year before I think we're really up and running, but it is something that is foremost on our minds. But I didn't want to deliberate to you all night long. I'd rather kind of listen to any questions you have and respond accordingly. So with that, I'd turn it over to each of you.
I know, thank you, Mike. I know that there was a lot of discussion with social media and inputting that, so there was kind of a two-way website interaction, but I wanted to ask Commissioner Gupta if you had any questions that are along that line.
Yeah, I would just, I spoke at the city council meeting as well, but I was just interested, I was just researching about social media, because the last few months we've heard from many different partners, where it's the PATH agency working with our homeless population, or preventing, high school overdoses. It just felt that there could be much more effective, methods of communication. And then I just researched a lot of different other cities who are doing excellent jobs at social media. And I saw Redondo Beach doesn't even have Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And so I was just wondering, if that's budgeted for. I know your website is a first intervention, but I just thought that it's just given this is where people are. Seems like a very important initiative as well.
I couldn't agree more, and it is. We are budgeted for it. Are we properly staffed to manage content and to be as effective with that dissemination of information? Not quite certain yet. We've got to look at the organization to determine who ultimately is going to be the gatekeeper for that. One of our assistant to the city managers is sort of the de facto PIO for us now, but really the departments are the chief kind of subject matter experts, and we want to work through their individual staffs. And the police department actually is one of our better communicators currently, and they have a dedicated individual that is able to kind of push information out, whether it be through traditional press releases, through our Everbridge platform with notifications and alerts, and sort of in between. So we think social media is going to be a big component of what we do. It seems it's a little sad to have to act as if we're just kind of coming to that party. It's been around a long time. We probably should have been more robust in it early on than we have been. There was concerns early in the social media days for public entities to figure out how to manage public information and to make sure that they were keeping records appropriately. That has, I think, that has dissipated as more organizations have really bought in and figured out how to manage it. So we don't have those concerns anymore, but we do have to make sure that we're providing quality content, because we could have a great platform, but if we're not pushing information out that's helpful, what use is it, right?
Yeah, sure. It's just, I'm sure you guys are studying it, but there's many cities across the United States
we
that
are.
done it very
We are.
effectively.
And there's some really good examples out there that we're trying to
totally.
pull in. And I
Sure,
think
sure.
the website conversation is really going to lend itself to sharing that information, I think, more effectively. So we're on that path, but it's going to take a bit. Yeah, website change is not an easy migration for a city like ours. That's hard.
How about LA HOP reporting so that people know what even that is, and getting that somewhere in some sort of tutorial on the website and then linking those together?
Yeah, I think there's absolute potential for that. I think video vignettes and having access and layering that, absolutely. I think that's all going to be part of it. It's just a matter of identifying what that content is and ultimately what we want to share and how best to share it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mike, I have a question. I have a comment anyway. But first of all, I hope you get the search engine working, because that's the place I usually go when I can't find anything else, but it doesn't work in the city. you'd never be able to locate what I'm looking for, but
Yeah,
I'd
that's our
make that a
biggest,
priority.
that's our biggest
Secondly,
fundamental weakness, I think, on our website right now. Its search engine is awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful.
yeah. Secondly, I guess, have been through this before in large corporation platform, but usually we try to look at the processes and make sure the processes are fairly stable and then try to build a system around those so they complement each other. And I don't know how the processes are in your, staff, but, might take a look at that too. Maybe it's a good chance to do that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good comment, and that is why we're looking at our internal communications plan, which speaks more to the organizational structure of how we staff information and the delivery information, as well as us evaluating the sort of technical software and how that interfaces with our other systems. So we're really trying to do those in parallel so they can be effective together.
Big task.
Big task. It really is. Yeah. And a slow one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any
Hi.
questions.
Oh, go
No,
ahead.
I
Yeah.
actually don't have any.
I just wanted to make a comment about some things that could use some improvement. The city calendar, it's lacking. Like, for example, this meeting here, it's not even on the city calendar. It's not there at all. And I complained about it in writing through the city clerk's office a week ago. And before attending this meeting, I looked, it's still not here. The Public Safety Commission is not on the city calendar website of city council and commission
It
meetings
wasn't on the
scheduled.
commission calendar. This
No, it's
meeting-
not.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
There's a calendar specifically for
Yep.
city council and commission.
Yep.
And I could not locate it this evening before coming here, and I
found the
couldn't find it a
materials
week
online
ago.
today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then another comment that I could ask is, so many times if you want a document, you can do a public records request. That's a lot of work for the city. If you were really well organized, you could have all the records online so people wouldn't have to make the request. They could just search for it and find it themselves.
Yeah, and with a good search engine, I think we'll have easier access for all of you. Yeah, that's the goal.
So realistically, you think a year? Is that what you're talking, or are you talking
Yeah,
this
and
is
that's
going to be a
probably
work in
optimistic.
progress?
Yeah.
That's optimistic, really, to be up and running. I hope we'll have made vendor selections ideally in the next 6 months, and then implementation is going to be somewhat subject to their capability.
If I need to hire a high school kid, they probably would do it for you
Right, right,
for cheap.
yeah.
Can you guys just create like a Redondo Beach social media, like Twitter? Like there's not even one official city.
So we do actually have, they're not publicly available right now. We actually have accounts. We have individual department accounts that are managed. We have a community services department account, and then we also have a police department account. And those are being actively, engaged. But we are needing to activate the broader city umbrella account. But I really want us to look at the communications plan as a council and the community first to make sure that we're careful about how we're managing the information that's there. Yeah, but we have the accounts, yeah.
Have you guys, I just looked up online, there's like consultant organizations for local, have you guys explored that?
We have, that is part of what we're looking at, and we may lean into that a bit. It's difficult, right? Because ultimately the gatekeepers of the information have to be those who are most intimately aware of their details, right? And how they might have value from a service standpoint. So you really have to rely on each of the operating departments to provide quality material, right? And timely material, because really they are the ones that know its value and
This
its
website I
impact.
looked up today, it provided all the guidelines for like 10 or 15 different cities about how they organize their
Yeah.
social media and stuff. So,
Which city is the
Yeah, that'd be-
leading ones?
Roanoke.
Roanoke?
Roanoke is like really big up there, but there's a bunch of examples that I looked at.
Listen, if you can share, my website's online or my email,
Yeah.
feel free to share what information you mind. I'll pass that along to our staff. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, because they published like a bunch of guidelines how other cities do all these questions, like how do they do the internal processes, make sure everything is.
That's great. No, we'll take all of
kosher
that.
and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Luke, who I hired as one of the other assistant city managers, has experience with that in his prior employment. And
I spoke with him actually. so
yeah,
I-
good. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's great.
If the city of Roanoke had a website back a few hundred years ago, they might have been found, yes. So it's probably good
Lost
to work on
colony.
this. Are there any other questions by the commission?
Not at this time. But thank you very much for showing up this evening,
Yeah,
introducing
thank you.
yourself. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all that you do. Really appreciate it. So, okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Looks like you got quite a awesome.
All right, moving on to J2. Discussion of recent fire events. Chief Yang.
Commissioners, how are you? Good evening. Always a pleasure. I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief because we have a wonderful panel of folks here to share great information from the great receiving facilities in the community. So at this juncture in time, the last quarter, our call volume is up by 454 calls from this time last year. We're at about 3,909 emergency responses to this point. That's an increase from 3,455 from last year on this date. We're averaging about 650 calls a month, and at that rate, we're at 7,818 calls projected this year, which is in line with our trending history of a 3% to 5% increase. That has been proven to be consistent throughout the last 10 years with a couple of year outliers. To the city manager's point, we do have a lot of support from the city. We've been able to capture a lot of equipment. I'm happy to report from a follow-up from last meeting, the request was where we're at with the first quarter of 2022 auto pulse deployments. The first quarter last year, unfortunately, this year, we had unfortunately 8 cardiac arrests. We were able to utilize the auto pulse on 5 occasions, and we're able to get return of spontaneous circulation in those 5 patients in totality with those 8 deployments. So that's a benefit, but to that point, also other good news is we're able to, through Measure B funding, capture 3 more devices. So therefore now all fire department stock, whether it's boats in the water, engines, truck, rescues, squads, every unit on the Redondo Beach Fire Department, everywhere in the city has an auto pulse device assigned to that unit. So there will be immediate deployment without hesitation. That being said, also, the city manager mentioned the Class 1 status that we've been given per the Insurance Services Office. That is probably a presentation, maybe the next go around, because it's pretty deep in terms of information. Really kind of the nuts and bolts of that rating were the top tier, the highest level of fire service functionality on the fire ground in a structured fire setting. So more to come on that. Happy to present. I will also give you documentation to kind of follow along the grading criteria. But with that being said, again, I want to be able to defer time to our guests here. Are there any other questions off the top from the commission at this juncture, fire department specific Redondo?
Do I hear a motion for that presentation next meeting? Either way, we'll leave it up to you. We'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
We can do that at the end, can't we?
Yeah.
Do referrals to
Referral to
staff.
staff.
Make a
Yep.
motion. I just have a question. This July 4th, is there a comparison? Is it different in terms of now, we're still in COVID, obviously, but there's tons of people at the beach. What was the response? I don't know what word I'm looking for. Do you know how many responses you guys had to do on July 4th and how that worked with the fireworks?
Sure. So July 4th, as you know, is a weekday event. So that helped with population density in the city. I worked that day. So anecdotally, it was a very manageable space. The fire and police departments worked together as we always do in unison. There was great coordination there. Relative to the runs of that day and into that night, certainly manageable with on-duty crews. There were no, say, spikes in volume that were outliers to the point where they were of great concern. The people that were enjoying the city did so responsibly. There was some crowds during the fireworks show. So the Seaside Lagoon went off at 9. That went till about 9:25, and they timed it between the pyrotechnic specialists to do a 2-minute delay over at Avenue I. Again, the saturation was what it was for the show. There weren't any fire-based red flags in terms of behavior, call volume, or concerns beyond just a typical call volume. I would defer to the police department because their experience is a little different in terms of kind of managing the space and managing the personnel, and then also with traffic and things of that nature. But this 4th of July, was a great holiday. Everyone enjoyed it responsibly. It was a great time.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so did you want to move over? Sure. Okay, so last meeting, I was singing the praises of the relationships we have with Redondo Beach Fire Department in the field setting with our clinical partners and the extraordinary services they provide. Specialty centers, certainly in the emergency room setting, it has been a phenomenal experience for me in my career, 20 years here in this city, to be able to be raised as a paramedic with the clinical staff, both at Torrance Memorial and Providence. It has just been a pleasure. So thankfully, Chairperson Gall was able to reach out, make some connections with some of our professional peers in the clinical settings. So at this point, I'd hand it over to Chairperson Gall. I'll step aside, and our esteemed guests will have a moment to share their services.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, well, we had such a great presentation from Chief Yang last meeting that I thought that maybe Little Company of Mary and Torrance Memorial would like to talk about door to needle, or how to respond to strokes, heart attacks, and perhaps how the city and hospital and the community can work together to improve patient setup, maybe the communication system. There's a lot of different avenues to change, and they take years to change them, but I would be delighted. I mean, I would love to flip a coin on this, but let's have Little Company of Mary. We'd be delighted to have you come up and present your experience with handling STEMI, stroke, and improving operations, and how the city of Redondo can also collaborate on these types of adventures. Thank you. Let's see. What do you think, Officer Lostrom? Should they sit on the side or go from the pulpit? All right, good.
You can go first. Commissioners, if you want to switch the screens to, there's a button right to the right of your keyboard that'll switch to presentation. And that's
thank
the
you.
screen that's on behind you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now I know what
We're all
PC
set.
stands for.
Hi, good evening. This is,
Wow.
my name is Dr. George Varnas. I'm medical director at Little Company Mary in Torrance over here of the Burns Department, and you'll be hearing from Jason Tarpley, my colleagues here afterwards. We were asked to talk a little bit about what our hospitals offer to the community, and then how we can communicate, collaborate better in the future. So without ado, I'll just move on ahead. At Little Company Mary, these are our key specialties. We are a cardiovascular center of excellence. We have partnered with cardiovascular surgeons from USC Keck, who do the majority of our heart bypasses and other heart surgeries. We have a partnership with City of Hope for our cancer care. We have an amazing neuroscience center, which has really developed over the last decade. I mean, I've been at Little Company 20 years in the ER, and what's happened over there in the last 10 years has been amazing, both with the stroke care and with a new amazing neurosurgery group. We have complex orthopedics and spine surgeons. We have bariatric surgery and weight loss management, advanced robotic surgery. Obviously, labor and delivery, we're known for a level 3 NICU. Emergency room, obviously 24 hours, intensive care, pediatrics. We have a critical care transport team. Generally, that's used when we have outside referring hospitals have a critical neuro patient. We actually send a team to go get them and bring them back to our hospital. Hospice, palliative care, home care, and our transitional care center, which was a nationally recognized skilled nursing facility down the street. All right. This is just a list of awards and recognitions hospitals had over the last number of years. I think the one we're most proud of is the MAGNIC designation for nursing excellence. Only 8% of I think hospitals in the country achieve that designation. And you'll see some other ones there with respect to stroke guidelines, heart failure, sepsis, neurosurgery, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's quite a few. Next. So just as we talked about before, we are a STEMI receiving center. We've been that for a long time. I think our processes with field units, Redondo Beach and all the other beach cities is really well dialed in. We get a call, they read the EKG, it's transmitted. We activate the cath lab. Patients often come in and don't spend more than a few minutes in our ED before they go to the cath lab. So that's really dialed in. We are EDAP, Emergency Department approved for pediatrics. We don't have pediatric ICU, but we do have inpatient floor pediatrics. And again, we talked about the advanced neurosurgery care. We do partner with our sister hospital in San Pedro for behavioral health patients. And even despite that partnership, it's oftentimes we do have to manage behavioral health patients in our ED for days and days and days when we can't get them to the appropriate place. But we do have that partnership. We don't have a SART in the hospital, but there's a SART clinic across the street that's available during business hours. And this is one of our newest teams. We have a pulmonary embolism response team. The traditional way to treat pulmonary embolisms is just to anticoagulate and wait for the clots to disappear over time. With real large major clots, it's found to have a lot of morbidity with like heart damage and even with DVTs, damage to the extremities for a long time. Now we've learned at this new procedure where we can actually remove the clots emergently from patients with pulmonary embolisms. And this program just started this year. So we've had two recent cases. A patient, a 37-year-old female with cardiac arrest, had a huge pulmonary embolism, and it was retrieved in our cath lab, and she walked out a week later, totally fine. Another young lady with PEs after surgery, she couldn't be anticoagulated and had a large thrombectomy and did great. So these are two of the great successes of this new program. And then I'll ask for opportunities. I think a lot of this has to do with data. I mean, you can see from Redondo Beach website, these things take years, as you say, to develop. LA County has put forth an initiative to have the health data exchange between EMS and the hospitals. It's not been implemented yet. I know that, at least from my experience at Providence, they're very wary about letting data in and out of their servers. So this is something that would probably take a long time. First Watch is another computer program really for EMS agencies to manage their wall times and protocols. That doesn't really interact with the hospital. And there's a couple other new communication telemedicine software companies that actually bridge EMS and hospital, where you can actually do telemedicine with the doc in the ER at the field and, do exams. The neurologist or interventional neurologist could actually look at the patient in the field, activate the cath lab in the field by their exam. So those are, again, things that are out there. We don't have them in our hospital, but those are things to think about. And I would say just to continue collaboration, as Isaac talked about, we've had a great relationship. I've been at the little company 22 years, and Chris Farnham, our pre-hospital care coordinator, a few more than that. So, I actually saw a hospital holiday party document from 1996, and Chris Farnham's name was on there. So,
started in 86.
86. Okay. And we've recently, through EMS Commission, has looked to decrease the ambulance wall times in our emergency department. So we've actually just started a new process improvement in our hospital to limit those in our hospital. So that would be it. So that's what I have. Is there any questions for me at this point?
What type of technology has been brought into the hospital to kind of get cities and hospitals working together, maybe from an app or some sort of, is there like a subcommittee that's maybe not county run, but maybe more locally run that develops technology into the hospitals, or is it pretty much hospital by hospital on what they bring into the hospital? And I'm just trying to figure out, do the cities and the EMS and the hospitals meet on a regular basis to discuss about like regional change opportunities and execute them?
I know at least for Providence is a huge organization. I think there's
Yeah.
5 hospitals, and
Yeah.
any kind of change or implementation has to go through a system approval process, which is lots of layers of red tape. It's like
Where are you headquartered at?
it's like Renton, Washington.
Wow, so it would have to start at HQ and then it would,
But I'm a part of system meetings where all ED directors of the whole system get together and discuss things. If there's a want or a need, we can make, kind of request or recommendations on something that we think is, would be beneficial. But as far as specifically right now is in that particular EMS hospital communication, I don't see anything that's imminent or really being discussed except for this, LA County data exchange.
So I could weigh in too, Joe. I think on the stroke side, there would be huge benefit to like an in-app communication. And there is actually a mechanism to do that outside of Renton. It's always nice to do things outside of Renton, which would be we actually have a research protocol that is IRB approved to look at that. So I'll talk a little bit about it on the stroke side, but I think that would be a potential really good collaboration that would, only benefit our patients. We started to collaborate with Isaac and it's been awesome. And just being able to communicate is so important.
Hi, so I'm a physician. I actually work at San Pedro a lot. I work for Optum and stuff, and have my own medical weight loss practice. But so Pulsara is that the system you're talking about that you can actually examine people in the field? Like,
I think all 3 of these companies have telemedicine capabilities. They can transmit EKGs. I think the eBridge actually, the hospital can then put in their call, the docs on call for STEMIs or strokes, and they can initially page them all at the same time and eliminates a lot of phone calls. It seems pretty robust, but I think it's a big, someone high up would have to decide that they want that. It wouldn't be just the guys in our hospital.
but do you know any example of like hospital systems and communities that have worked together and where the funding would come from, and is it like split and all that?
That's a bit over my pay grade. I don't know. I know I just met with Clayton Kassan. He's the medical director for LA County. We talked. I asked him for a lot of ideas for this. So that's where
I think you would get a lot of support from industry.
Yeah.
Because these companies, these AI companies that, for example, we have one that lives on our scanner that tries to recognize if a patient is having a stroke. They're clamoring to get everybody's business. So I think you could establish something where you said, yeah, if you give it to us for free, we'll do a research project and we'll see if we help patients.
do a white paper study, that type
Yeah.
of thing, because I think Triage and the other one, Pulsara, say, yeah, you can try it, it's free. But, that sounds better than Cal OES admitting that 911, please hold, is needing some updating, but waiting for state and waiting for 88 cities and county to kind of get caught up. Maybe we can prototype something here with a smaller group and then pass it on up to Washington or, to county, et cetera, bottom up. That's what I was thinking.
If the city can work with these companies, then if that technology is there with our EMS, the hospital systems could just, it doesn't have to be a huge protocol change necessarily.
Yeah, we actually have an active IRB with one of the companies. I'm agnostic to what it would be, but Cure AI is a company that's like really a bunch of really smart people who are trying to enter this space. And, we could actually modify our IRB to say, hey, could we put this in the hands of the EMS? And then they could start communicating with us even before the patient gets to the hospital. You're sort of cutting to the end of my talk, but I think we should act earlier.
Let's let Jason do his part and we can answer more questions. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, so, I think it's funny, I sort of look out here and I see Isaac who responds to everything. All of the patients dying from every organ and the cats in the trees and the people who can't figure out how to turn off their water mains, and the overdoses. And then Joe responds to like half of that, right? All of the people dying from all their organs. I just have the one organ. So I feel a little bit outmatched here in this lineup. And I'm going to talk to you guys anyway about stroke. And so we're a comprehensive stroke center. And what that means is that we spend a ton of money bringing in specialists who can treat all types of stroke. And I simplistically think about them as clogged pipes, which represent about 80%, and burst pipes, which represent about 20%. And so I show you a picture here of the pipes. These are all the arteries in the brain. I don't have the veins pictured here, but clogged pipes have, someone who has a clot in their heart that travels up to the brain and blocks one of these arteries, or lots of other really cool mechanisms of clogged pipes exist, and we have really cool treatments for these. So stroke centers have really, really cool treatments. In particular, IV thrombolysis, which, if you guys get a patient to us, you're talking about door to needle time. That's what we're referring to. How fast can we get the Drano in a patient who has a clogged pipe? Now, very often the Drano doesn't work. Just as Drano doesn't work to unclog big clogs in your pipes, sometimes you need to have a snake. And that's what I do as I'm a neurointerventional surgeon, so I navigate catheters up into the brain to open up pipes. But there's also burst pipes. They represent 20% of the strokes that you're going to see in the brain. And that includes ruptured and unruptured aneurysms, AVMs, dural AV fistulas, intracerebral hemorrhages, and subdural hemorrhages, which isn't really a stroke, but we just see a ton of that. And these are all just really, really cool problems that can happen in the arteries of the brain that we are very well equipped to take care of. So 5 minutes, you told me 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 slides. I give you like 15 slides in 10 minutes, but.
Enjoying every minute of it.
Okay,
Doctor.
great.
Thank you.
So I don't have time to talk about all the things we do. We'll talk about one of the most important, which is endovascular thrombectomy. And you guys have heard the expression time is brain. This actually shows a graph with the vertical axis showing the likelihood of a good outcome if somebody comes in and gets a thrombectomy. So if they have a clot that gets stuck in their brain and you guys bring them to us, Isaac brings them to us, Joe evaluates that patient quickly, gets them onto my table, and I pull that clot out, that's the likelihood of them having a good outcome over the course of time. And so that is a very steep curve, but it's not so, it's just the faster you move, the better, right? And so the truth is not everybody progresses like that, but that's the average, right? Some people progress a little faster. Some people progress a little bit slower. So we say they're losing about 2 million neurons per minute, 2 million brain cells per minute, which sounds like a lot, but you have billions of neurons. Here's the way I like to think of it. Every 20 minutes of delay that you have getting to a thrombectomy corresponds to 10% less likelihood of a good outcome, right? So you come in, that's why we were put on this earth, is to figure out the best possible outcome we can have for these stroke patients. So what can we do? About 50% of patients who get a thrombectomy will have a really good rock star outcome where they are independent at 90 days. It's amazing considering that almost none of them had a good outcome a decade ago, but that still means 50% don't. So what can we do to improve the likelihood of a good outcome? Clearly, time is one of the most important things. This is what an endovascular thrombectomy is. We put a little catheter in the artery of the leg about the size of an iPhone charging cable. It seems like everybody knows how big that is. And then through that, we navigate a smaller catheter, that dark blue catheter, up into the artery of the neck. And then you can see there's telescoping catheters, that ACE64, the 3 Max, and then the wire is a very soft, flexible wire that I can steer on the back end, and I can navigate those catheters over it and advance them right up to the face of that clot. I'm going to try to show this video. Oh, okay. So the video is not going to work, but you guys have to trust me. Basically, we navigate that tiny catheter up there. Usually it takes on the order of about 10 minutes, and it's really cool procedure. And actually, it's one of the most effective therapies in all of medicine. So it represents a revolution in stroke care. There have been multiple clinical research trials showing it's actually quite dramatic benefit in reducing disability. As you guys know, stroke it not only kills, but sometimes worse, right? It maims, it leaves patients totally disabled. So this turns out to be one of the most effective therapies in medicine with a number needed to treat as low as 2. And so this little pictorial diagram here shows what I told you earlier. About 53% of patients who get this therapy, if you look at all comers, will have an excellent outcome at 90 days. They'll be able to be independent, take care of themselves, which is amazing, actually. And, you're coming in at 2 a.m. to take care of these patients, and very often you pull the clot out, and before you had the clot out, they were unable to speak, and they couldn't move their right side, and you take the clot out, and right on the table, they get better right in front of you.
Wow.
But there's still 50% of patients who don't, right? So all of the patients in the red and black here either end up disabled or dead. So there is clear room for improvement. And that's what I said. That's why we were put on this earth, is to try to improve this number. Any little edge we can do. Can we get to 60% good outcome? Can we get to 70? And so, Commissioner, I think your in-app idea should come sooner than later, because this is what we're talking about, is increasing the number of positive outcomes here. We have a ton of, I didn't present our data, but we have actually the top door-to-device times and reperfusion outcomes for this procedure in all of the Providence system, which is in 12 states. It's like 40 hospitals. But it's not just about what you can do to that with that patient right there. Clearly, getting the clot out all in one piece, getting the clot out as quickly as possible increases the likelihood, but so does giving a thrombolytic therapy, right? And so we didn't talk about that much, but the Drano, it's better if patients have that, but some patients are ineligible for it. We have clinical trials for patients like this. They can get a neuroprotectant drug that probably increases the likelihood of a good outcome up to about 60%. And so that's the way I think of it. The way we think of it is like any little edge we can get. So we have clinical trials. This shows our portfolio of clinical trials that we offer patients cutting edge therapies in. And I think honestly, this is going to be the best way to move forward quickly in our collaborations with you all. You can see there, Escape Next at the top. We have 14 patients on trial. That's a trial where you can give a neuroprotectant drug to help prevent the loss of those neurons while you're reopening the vessel. There's a intra-arterial stem cell delivery trial that we're going to be doing, where you can actually navigate catheters up into the brain and deliver stem cells into the injured brain. And we're actually even doing robotic neurointervention now. So the future is truly here. This shows our new robot and me operating. Basically, you can see here that this is me. This is a huge control panel where I can see all of the arteries in this patient's brain, and navigating via these super precise joysticks, navigating those same catheters and wires up into the patient. The patient is over here through this glass wall sitting right next to me. So here are my techs moving the cameras around, and this is this robotic arm that I can actually do these procedures through. So we start thinking about all the bureaucracy that can happen that can slow us down, but this is basically what industry does. They can innovate right here, right now. This is the way, Shli Song is going to talk next. She's a stroke neurologist. This is the way a stroke neurologist's brain works. Shli, you can disagree if you want, but basically you're constantly updating probabilities. Okay, so you're getting a pre-hospital score that gives you some % probability of this patient having a large vessel occlusion. A LAMS positive patient, that's the score we use here, LAMS 4 or 5, that means there's a 30 to 50% chance it's an LVO. Could be a lot of other things. Could be a big bleed, could be a seizure, could be a brain tumor. Then the patient comes in, they get a non-contrast head CT. That's node 2. That's usually done within 15 minutes. Then they get a CT angiogram, which is going to officially see that blockage in the brain, and they're going to get a CT perfusion, which is also going to see that blockage in the brain, and it's more sensitive. It's good for distal, farther out, medium vessel occlusions, things like that. Basically, there's these 4 nodes that come into your brain, and you have to update probabilities in real time to have a guess about when I have enough information to call in the cavalry. And so getting that team in and getting my catheters up in their brain, and that's it's a huge process. It takes about 30 steps. It's very expensive. The catheter is expensive. The wires are expensive. The personnel is expensive. But you cannot wait till you are 100% sure. You also have to be careful about over-activating your team and causing alert fatigue. So the way I describe this is basically like a sprint in the beginning. The first 15 minutes are a sprint. Get as much information as you can to activate the cath lab early, but also if there's something there that's going to tell you that, this patient has a brain tumor and they have seizures and this has happened to them before, okay, I'm going to hold off on this one to activate the team. The 2 big therapies here, I have thrombolysis and thrombectomy. I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on this because I think this is really where you guys interface with us and where we could improve. So when I'm going to give someone intravenous thrombolysis, we use tenecteplase, so does Torrance Memorial. I'm going to ask them, did you have recent surgery or trauma that would exclude you from this therapy? What's your last known well time? Did your stroke occur in the last 4.5 hours? Or if it occurred longer in the 4.5 to 9 hour time window, are you a candidate for this, imaging-based delayed thrombolysis? Are you on any anticoagulants? If you're taking Coumadin or Eliquis at home, you're out. I can't give you this therapy. And are these symptoms disabling, right? You want to, if you're going to give this treatment, there's some risk. You want to have some form of disabling symptoms. It's a really complex decision. It's made super quickly. One thing that you guys could help us with right here and right now is very low tech. Get the loved one's phone number. We've approved this through LA County EMS. If you get the LAR, legally authorized representative, or even the reporting party's phone number, we can start working on those factors before the patient gets into the hospital, right? By the time they get there, you could have already talked to their family member and said, oh yeah, this last known well time was super secured. They were with their loved one at dinner, or it's a little bit softer. It's not so I think that the field team does like a little bit of a modified scoop and run, but if we could have that phone number, we could start doing our homework early. Thrombolysis is relatively low tech. It just requires an IV and a good stroke neurologist. That part's not low tech. But, you can give that medication intravenously. But as I said, it only works in 20 to 30% of large vessel occlusions. So we want to get that on. But we have this other process that takes about 30 steps. Yeah. And that one, we want to start getting the horses out of the barn really quickly, right?
That's where an app sounds like it would be useful to kind of
It would
mobilize
be
certain
incredible.
groups and then track it.
It would be incredible. And so we look at it several things. We look at certain things that are actually predictors in the field, gaze deviation. If the patient is actually looking away from the site of weakness, it's very likely that they're going to end up having a large vessel occlusion. In fact, the Ventura County ELVO score looks at gaze deviation. In LA, we just look at weakness. There's other sophisticated things, including if the patient has right-sided weakness, they're sort of telling you something's wrong with the left side of their brain. If they also can't talk, then that's really telling you this is very likely to be an ELVO, a large vessel occlusion patient. So there's all these really cool, pretty simple things that you can do that increase the probability. Okay. So basically what I would say is with that, you're constantly updating probabilities. We have to get that information early. So it's really get as much information as you possibly can in the first 15 minutes. And it should be a sprint. That should be the fastest part, right? That starts before the patient gets to the hospital. And you actually have a deadline. Basically, if you don't activate your cath lab within 15 minutes of the patient hitting the hospital, you aren't going to make the metric goal of 90 minutes, which is what we think is the best. The faster you go, the better, but we think that's a good goal to have. So that means you have to activate with incomplete information, but the more information you have, the more intelligent you could be with that. So just to summarize, I think that, Comprehensive Stroke Center, Joint Commission Comprehensive Stroke Center, it basically means that we treat any type of stroke. Nothing is too complex. Endovascular thrombectomy is just one simple example of that, although I chose to go over that because it's one of the most effective therapies in medicine. And there's really multiple ways to optimize patient outcomes, and that's what we're always trying to do is figure out what those are. Faster reperfusion, more complete reperfusion, neuroprotectant drugs, stem cells, robotics, and other research. And really the potential collaborations or partnerships with you all are things we can do right now, super simple. We've been working on it for a while, but we just haven't really gotten a lot of buy-in. But getting the legally authorized representative or reporting party phone number can help us get a jump on these stroke patients. We can start gathering information before they even hit the door, and we can start that tonight. Like it's approved through LA County EMS. I pushed it through. Marianne Galche-Hill is supportive of it. We can totally start doing that. And then sooner than you think, in-app communications can be combined with AI. So we have, there are companies out there. The one that we have the research protocol with is Cure AI. There's also Rapid and Viz AI are a little bit farther along and probably a little bit more expensive to do this, but they are eager to develop their product for future use, and it's not there now. So I'm certain we could do that. You could imagine a situation where many of these little check boxes are on an app that Isaac has, that I have, that Joe has, that Shlee has, that we all have, and we start to see as information comes up. You could have a real-time, I don't know if you guys do fantasy football, that's how I think about this. Like there's that little percentage to win thing, and it's always updated as something happens. Someone has a fumble, you lose a little bit, and you could have something that says likelihood of large vessel occlusion. Once you hit 80% or whatever, you just activate your cath lab. Then you know you're not causing alert fatigue and you're getting a jump on these as fast as you can. So I'm sure that there are really great opportunities for us to collaborate. Those are the ones I thought of, but we're eager to collaborate in any way possible.
Thank you, Doctor.
So thank you for that presentation. That was really awesome.
Fantastic.
So, this is, of course, we're trying to emulate like the STEMI, right? We're trying to emulate that, but that was in ways a lot more simplistic because it was like STEMI or not STEMI based on one EKG, right? So in this case, it's all about the large vessel stroke, right? Because I'm a hospitalist, I've had plenty of patients that had aphasia, but you do the CTA, there's no large vessel there, and no large vessel thrombosis that we can intervene on. So in these, AI protocols, there are ways outside of the imaging to show like an 80% probability of a large vessel?
Well, I think that's a really good point. So there's large vessel and there's medium vessel. I mean, so if you're talking about the easy ones to detect are large vessel occlusions. So the big trunk of the tree, so that's like right here. This is the middle cerebral artery. And usually if this is blocked, you can imagine there's this whole wedge of brain that's not working. So those patients usually have a lot of symptoms, and they're actually pretty easy. With this AI company, this is the first project I did with them. I actually looked at if they could just look at a CT scan and see if the eyes were deviated towards the side of the stroke. Super simple, but they actually could. 70% of the time you see those eyes deviated toward the side of the stroke. And that's just one little factor, right? That's like without any other information. So you could get much higher probabilities if you start layering in some of these other things. The medium vessel occlusions, Doc, are, out here, and those patients can be tricky. Those patients can be aphasic without motor weakness. I often feel you need a perfusion scan to tell those patients that, and we see those actually take longer to treat because they take longer to triage. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. I mean, because the whole limiting factor is the imaging, right? Like if we had like multiple
But there's so
CT
much
scans.
before imaging,
Yeah.
right? And so if I think a decade ago, everybody would wait to activate your team until you had proof positive of a large vessel occlusion. Now we just need I don't know what it is, 80%. You mentioned STEMI. It's really interesting. STEMI, upwards of around 30 to 40% of those patients are actually taken to angiogram and they don't have an occlusion.
Yeah.
So they're in almost a better situation where they just have one piece of information, they act on it, and then look, they just did an angiogram that the patient didn't need if they didn't have it. But yeah.
So just one more thing, how the history of that developed, right, is that they would look at the best performing communities of, back in the 80s, and they figured out who was actually able to achieve door to balloon time in 90 minutes. And so are there any communities that are doing this really well right now?
Well, I think we're the best, but I don't think that's enough. So that's the thing. We pat each other on the back and, we're at 80% door to device under 90, the best in the system, one of the best in LA County, but okay.
Nationwide.
But if we could improve that by 20 minutes, all of our patients, if we made one intervention, if you can improve that by 20 minutes, all your patients would automatically have a 10% better chance of a good outcome. I mean, there's very few things you can do that in.
No, totally. I'm just
So
wondering.
yeah, I
if
mean,
we
we're
can-
doing really well, but I think we're going to have to look beyond like what's being done.
So it's just anywhere in the United States, do you think?
I think we're probably the best. LA actually was one of the first places to institute LAMS-based routing. Most of the cities in this country, they don't have large vessel occlusion scores that then, so they go to primary stroke centers, then they get transferred. So LA County was one of the first ones it was January 5th in 2018 to actually institute routing. So I think we're doing a really good job, but there's always improvement.
I know Seattle is very good at like just the cardiac stuff in terms of EMS and stuff. That's awesome. So I get what you're saying. We have to innovate, right? That's what you're saying. But it's interesting to look at if there's any best policies for other things also, like how people are working with the communities. But that's interesting. The AI, in terms of this company that you're working with already, so they're already testing all these variables to develop that 80% probability score?
Well, they're doing what we've only done one research project with them so far, but I just said, look, these gaze deviations, you can see them on the scan. Tell your computer to figure that out. It can't be that hard, and they did it.
Yeah. I guess the first step would be studying it without, just having the software there and then testing it out, seeing what the CT shows.
Yeah, we could do something, I don't know what would be good, but we could do something like they did with the mobile stroke unit where you did like week on, week off. It's hard to do that with like a pathway.
Yeah.
Because it's better to be practiced, so it's kind of hard to have it. Or you could just say, okay, we're going to put these in and we're going to see if we did it tonight.
Yeah.
Everything after that, are we getting better door to device times, better door to needle times, better outcomes?
Cool. What's the next step? Like, I guess, meeting with this company or something, saying like.
Well, I don't know. You guys invited us and said, what do you think? To me, this seems like the most expedited way for us to deliver faster care to our patients. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really great idea.
This has been a really good set of presentations by Little Company of Mary. Do we have any other presenters from Little Company of Mary?
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
I'm Chris Farnham, Pre-Hospital Care, and we've collaborated with Isaac for all these years. It's been amazing. Thank you, Isaac. And I collaborate with Emily Brown, who is the educator for the paramedics. And we have had Heart Warrior presentations. I don't know if you've explained that to them, but it's patients that have come to us and they were in cardiac arrest. They were resuscitated either in the field or we resuscitated them and they walked out of the hospital. And that just speaks to the commitment of care that the paramedics give to us or give to the community and the patients. And I've been talking with Emily, their educator, and we're going to be setting up a couple more of those Heart Warrior Awards because the care that they give is amazing. We always have had a good relationship with Redondo. You should be really excited and proud to have them as paramedics in your city because they are really top of the line. And so I just wanted to point that out that we're, with the autopulse, I think that has really increased survival rate. So thank you very much for providing that for one of the tools that they can use for resuscitation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
That was an awesome presentation, Doctor. I'm glad that there are people brilliant like yourselves in our community.
All three
That
of
was
you.
fascinating.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much.
And we're on to Torrance Memorial.
You know, before we go, I'd like to make a comment. I really appreciate hearing this great dialogue where automation, you know, smart doctors like yourself, smart staff like yourself. I'm coming from a place that lost my father at 66 from a stroke and my grandmother at 58 from a stroke. I'm sitting here thinking there's nothing we can do, but you've just empowered me to think that there's a lot of things we can do. And, you know, to bring it to our attention, the audience out there, that hopefully this will resonate with them and they, you know, they will also get involved. But thank you for giving us hope in everything you do. Thank you.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity. I'm Shannon Hahn, the Vice President for Torrance Memorial, and I have my team with me today. I have Marco Peck, he's our stroke coordinator, and Dr. Song, she's our Director of Neuroservices and Stroke for Torrance and Cedars. Our Emergency Department Director and our EMS coordinator is with us tonight. So really appreciate the conversation. With respect about the future, something I think would be really helpful is bringing a request for information or for bid to the Hospital Association of Southern California. Those are all of CEOs and decision makers of all the hospitals of Southern California. There's been some really great success such as the Emergency Department Information Exchange that came through HASC, that many hospitals, ourselves, Providence, lots of hospitals across California, Washington State, really partnered to exchange information by using a really new innovation and tech. And I think that could be a good forum for something like this, especially that what you were talking about with that app. It could really give them a platform because that's what it seems like we're really looking for. I'm going to go ahead and turn over the presentation to Marco. He's going to run the presentation and then we'll be available for questions.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and I appreciate your invite and in order for us to come and talk to you today. Dr. Tarpley, thank you so much for that informative discussion about stroke intervention, thrombolysis, and mechanical thrombectomy. So really appreciate your service to the community, as well as part of LA Stroke Society and our stroke coordinator network that we run in LA County, which is very helpful to kind of see how things are going in the community and how we can make improvements to really ultimately help with patients and try and return them to a baseline function. That's our ultimate goal here, is patients at the center of everything. So thank you so much. All right, so a little bit about us as a hospital. Torrance Memorial, it's a 443-bed, not-for-profit regional medical center providing quality services predominantly to residents of the South Bay, Peninsula, and Harbor communities. In 2022, we were recognized by the U.S. News & World Report, as well as Newsweek as part of our global and regional hospital rankings. So being a part of about the top 3% in all of California, as well as having outstanding care and nursing excellence when it comes to our magnet designation, which that little company is as well too, and focusing on our Lantern Award. So when it comes to the magnet designation, we're looking at the top 10 of all hospitals in the country. So that's over 6,000 hospitals, and being a part of that is a real true testament to the organizational leadership and the improvement in quality care that we look for when it comes to nursing excellence. So focusing on some of our hospital specialty programs, you can see here we have our Lundquist Neuroscience Institute, which encompasses our Comprehensive Stroke Center. Our Lundquist Laurel Cardiovascular Institute has been a pioneer in the South Bay for a number of years. Our Hunt Cancer Center, which opened up their facilities in 2019, which has been a great boon to the community as a resource for oncological services. Looking at Burn and Wound Care Center, so being one of 3 in all of LA County, which we take a great pride in servicing the community here. Our Maternal Child Services, Level 3 NICU, our Eating Disorder Program, which is renowned over the world as well. Orthopedics, diabetes, and bariatric care. In 2022, this year, we actually had a community needs assessment that looked at some of the opportunities, how we can incorporate the needs of the community and how we can improve care overall. And one of those is looking at our service area. So we provide services for over 250,000 people in the South Bay. This is kind of what that image on the right kind of shows and highlights. Some of our hospital specialty programs, you can see our emergency services there with our EMS base station, which is numbers about a dozen or so in LA County. Our EDAP pediatric services, which a little company highlighted as well too, having helipad access via our Torrance Memorial Airport. So we can provide quaternary care in our affiliation with Cedars-Sinai for some of those higher level disease processes, and we coordinate care quite well with them. Having a mobile stroke unit service area in the South Bay, which usually is here throughout the end of the week, where they actually have an imaging scanner on board and essentially bringing the care team to the patient in the field in order to try and reduce those door-to-needle times and improve that communication in the field. And you can see our cardiac care here, as well as interventional cardiology as a STEMI receiving center, our cardiothoracic, cardiovascular surgery, and our heart failure program as well. And then touching base on some of our neurology and neurosurgery specialty, which I talked about, our comprehensive stroke center, is really managing those complex cases with neurology and neurosurgery in the stroke world. So, managing some of the sickest patients in the community when it comes to stroke. And other specialty programs, looking at our ECMO program, which is our extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. So looking at some of the highest level of life support that we can offer in the South Bay. I know Little Company talked a little bit about their pulmonary embolism response team, which has been really integral in order to improve the outcomes of patients with PE and DVT. I touched base a little bit our burn center, our perinatal, and our level 3 NICU, which we recently renovated and opened a couple of years ago. All right, so how does this all work together when it comes to Torrance Memorial and Redondo Beach Fire?
Yeah.
You can see here a little bit of a glance. When it comes to Redondo Beach Fire ALS transports at Torrance Memorial, we've had about 200 since the beginning of the year until the end of June. Looking at transport distances from Redondo Beach Fire from the two stations, so Redondo Beach Fire Station 1 is 3.4 miles, looking at Station 2 at 5.1. So really looking at those turnaround times for transport, from Redondo Beach responding to the field, as well as transporting patients here to Torrance Memorial. And then looking at our average wait time, or what we call our wall time, is approximately 30 minutes. And that's for all arriving EMS transport. And that's really the standard and what we try and shoot for as a metric when it comes to wait times. Obviously, if there's a patient requiring, some advanced, care or time-dependent interventions, then we operate much quickly and typically get early notification, especially if it's a stroke-type symptom. And then one thing we focus on too is really offloading the EMS team back into the field in order to service them. And we work with our staffed positions inside the hospital to really triage that patient, get them into an ED bed, and manage appropriately. All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. What is your early notification technology that you're currently using?
So we work with our EMS providers going over our MLAPS and LAM scores. So if it's a LAM score 405, we get that early notification, and that's usually communicated with the base station and communicated to our providers in order to really set us up for those patients coming en route, so we can activate our stroke neurologist and get our code nurse at the bedside ready to receive that patient.
We also have that rapid app that all the staff, Dr. Tarpley mentioned that. So we are aware of a large vessel occlusion that's identified through the app. The other things I wanted to mention about the collaborative process that we've had with our colleagues at Little Company as well is that 10 years ago, as Chief Yang said, we used to have to transfer all these patients to Cedars, UCLA, to Keck. Now they're treated here in the community, and the experts are here in the region. So that critical time, the 20, 30 minutes, we would take those patients coordinating with EMS and would take 90 minutes to get to the quaternary center. And a lot of those vessels were opened, but the outcomes were poor because of all that transport time that needed to happen. Now that expert care is here, we've had great philanthropy with the Hunt's family that's donated to Little Company and to Torrance Memorial. And then the Lundquists have invested a lot to be able to bring that expertise to the region. I have an uncle that lives in Redondo Beach. He's an anesthesiologist. His son, who is at Tufts, said, hey, my uncle, his father with impending brainstem herniation from a bleed. Can I transfer this patient to UCLA was the request. That patient was treated at Torrance Memorial, thankfully with the intensivists that are administering the osmotic agents. And then just this weekend, I had a patient that was treated for her cancer. She's in her 40s with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, had radiation therapy, antiphospholipid syndrome. So she was very prone to clotting. She used to get her care at UCLA and at Cedars-Sinai. She got her hematoma evacuation at Little Company Mary. So the care in the past 10 years has really been improved to be able to bring that expert care here. And then I would like to see us do a better job in terms of getting blood pressure control and that transition from hospital to home better, working together with our regional partners in social work and case management, that really that handoff to the PCP needs to be done better. We need to be able to keep a lot of our patients out of the hospital and into society again and back to their primary care doctors. A lot of what we saw during the pandemic is blood pressures out of control and unnecessary bleeding happen because a lot of people were not doing their due diligence with their screening evaluations. So I'd like to be able to do that together with our partners in the community and be able to continue to keep that regional care here. I work with Dr. Tarpley in terms of recruiting the next generation of physicians that are graduating from our local expert academic sites, and they're practicing here. So lots of great developments.
Quick question, is there anything the city of Redondo Beach should be looking at 3 to 5 years from now in terms of technology investments or just training, either educating the community or training the fire department, et cetera, to respond quicker or get patient data communicated better before the patient hits the hospital?
Yeah, one of the hopes that I've been working on with our virtual medicine lab and our sim labs is we have a large proportion of patients with posterior circulation strokes that are really not identified early. And then a lot of the therapies are applied late. All the things that Dr. Tarpley had mentioned, a lot of that stuff is done for the front portion of the brain when a patient stops talking or one side is paralyzed. But what about those patients with loss of balance or their vision goes and they're nauseous and they're dizzy? It can take hours in the emergency room. So what I'd like to work together on is improving that identification system. We have these simulation labs and VR type of apps that are out there, and I'd like to start working together to improve the detection of that from even the EMS pickup to our emergency room team members.
What is a VR app?
Oh, so it's with virtual reality.
Okay.
So a lot of the simulation scenarios are done at Cedars-Sinai, but now these VR apps or the devices are now $300. And so you can hook it up with your own devices and your laptops, and we could potentially load them up with our colleagues in the region to improve the detection of things that are more subtle in terms of the findings. It could be in the eyes, it could be
The eye angle detection.
and the eye movements, yeah.
Got you.
You could also have like a public service campaign, just like, like to the community. That could be something we could do to kind of identify these constellation of symptoms.
Using the new platform, right?
Yeah, eventually.
Yes. Using the new platform to
Posting
do
it on
training
LinkedIn.
and putting out the campaign for the public. Absolutely.
I mean, just like,
Yeah.
like people, I think, have awareness of stroke in certain things, right? But like, as you said, these posterior symptoms, people are like, oh, I feel, dizzy or something like that. So at least they can get to the ER faster, get the imaging faster, get the procedure faster.
Right.
There's a mnemonic, that we've used a long time in the stroke world as far as FAST and symptom recognition for stroke.
Yeah.
And just over the past several years, we've added B FAST to that, to catch those more subtle symptoms when it comes to the posterior circulation, looking at, imbalance, and as well as anytime deficits with the eyes. So it's a real national campaign in order to kind of get the awareness out there. And really, community awareness is going to be huge. And that's what we really focus on when it comes to symptom recognition is letting the loved ones know. When it comes to stroke, 25 to 30% will have a stroke again. So really, honing in on those signs and symptoms to really focus on that management.
So we could do that, as from the city angle or like
Right.
beach cities as well.
I mean, we could absolutely collaborate and support you with content. Both health systems would be happy to do that. That's something that we readily have different campaigns and content that we push out to people that are engaging with our social media so that we can provide education. And we have that readily available to share.
I think it's great that we learn about technologies that are relatively inexpensive, or maybe a program that we might be able to prototype at a local level and maybe advise council and staff to do that, maybe toward the end of this year or the next budget cycle. So this is really good. Shauna, did you have anything to add via what we were talking about in this discussion?
No, I just want to be respectful and mindful of everybody's time. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present and to collaborate for the benefit of our community. That's what both health systems are here for, is to help take care of our community. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for showing up this evening.
And should we wrap up the presentations by Little Company and Torrance Memorial? Chief Yang?
First, I want to thank the commission for bringing this time together. This collaborative effort from the community to the field, from the field to the clinical setting. It is so eye-opening, the level of profound care, the options for therapy, the follow-up. To say that the network for community care is, for whatever reason, lacking would probably be the most monumental of understatements. So to know that, the clinical experts, the field providers, that we work together. I mean, we were doing transmissions of EKGs over 10 years ago in collaborations with our base hospital, Little Company Mary, coming together in a point in time where we had no idea how that transmission would work, but making those things happen, really for the community's benefit, to be able to be exceptional provider partners, again, from the field to the clinical setting, really for the service of the wellness of the people in the community. So this conversation tonight is opening new doors to the next phase, not just 10 to 15 years ago and beyond, where paramedicine hit in 1970, but moving into 2022 and beyond, to be able to include all things therapeutic care moving into the future, but reducing response times, accentuating treatment times for the most premium outcomes, for the most profoundly sick in the community. So I just want to say thank you so much to our partners here, and then really looking forward to being able to give you updates as we're moving forward with the direction of this group. It's just a very exciting time, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Oh, I gotta put my glasses on and adjust. Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank all of you.
Yeah, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, that was wonderful.
Thanks for all the good that you do for all of us.
Thank you.
Oh, that was great. Chairman Gall, you outdid yourself on that one there. That was,
I
it was
know, I
perfectly
need to
timed. It's
pause.
exactly what we've been talking about. Chief Yang is right on the forefront. I mean, I cannot believe how brilliant some of our community members are, and
I think I've increased his schedule by about 20%. So I hope he can handle it. We'd be glad to bring in any further expertise that will be needed to help move things along. But I would go to J3 if city prosecutor is available. Officer Lostrom? Sounds like a busy night.
They are not present.
Okay, very good. And we will go to J4, Officer Lostrom, discussion of recent law enforcement events and crime.
Can we back up just for a
recap.
minute?
Yes.
I was going to ask Officer Lostrom about the city prosecutor's office. Do we know why they're not here, or they're just not here?
She sent me an email today that said they wouldn't be present. They have been present the past.
I knew they were at the last one. I missed the
Couple.
last one, so I wasn't here. I just,
I did not get any additional information on their absence, just that they would.
They'll probably be here next meeting. We have a couple of stakeholders that
absent.
I'm sure they'll interact with.
thank you.
And we'll go to J4.
Okay, I know that medical stuff was good, but I'm really going to blow your mind.
It's good for next week's newsletter.
In addition to the material that I've provided you in the agenda packet, there's actually two things that I would like to touch on of high importance, or what I perceive you guys would consider important. Number one is, I'm actually going to put my screen up here now that I'm an expert at this. And you guys can read that. So this is the new catalytic converter municipal code that was enacted in the city of Redondo Beach on July 7th, 2022. Went into effect. It's been in the works for a few months. So this actually is the first we know of in the area of anyone doing anything like this.
Your screen's not being shared. I don't know if you know that. It started to, and then
Stand
it went
by.
back. It went back to thank you.
Stand by. How are we
Awesome.
looking now on your computers?
Got it.
Got it.
You guys can see it. Anyways, this is how it's written, but it basically, it's a misdemeanor crime now to possess a catalytic converter without proper documentation or other proof of lawful possession. It defines lawful possession being the lawful owner, or possessing something with lawful owner's written consent. You don't have to prove that it was stolen for it to not be in lawful possession, which is huge because that's been a limitation of arresting people for grand theft for catalytic converters. If we don't have a witness to the crime, like we pull a person over and there's 8 of them in the car and the Sawzall, and we can't know anything for sure, but we're pretty certain about what happened. So this is unique to the city of Redondo Beach and is going to give us more teeth, so to speak, in regards to addressing this issue and creating consequences for those who engage in catalytic converter theft. So.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the cost of one catalytic converter?
It's like 3,000.
It varies. They can go upwards of $2,000. I've made several arrests like that. They can be as low as $300-400. Wow. Depending on the make and model of a vehicle. I've made several arrests like that where I've searched parts online to get an idea of the estimated value for the purpose of the arrest. And I've gotten all sorts of numbers upwards as high as 2,000, but sometimes lower. Certain makes and models of vehicles, as you guys know, are targeted more than others. Number 2, there was a high level of public inquiry regarding an incident on Artesia. There is some information in your packet about it, but basically an armed robbery occurred at a massage parlor. And it was the difference between the level of response and kind of what you would normally think. We just go try and figure out who committed the armed robbery and catch the suspect, is it was believed that he was still inside that building. So there's a high level of response for containment, tactical personnel that conduct a high-risk search because the subject was armed, which obviously involves street closures and et cetera to keep everybody safe around. But there was a high level of public inquiry when that incident was occurring. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that incident.
Any relation with the B of A Glock behind the back at 11 o'clock at night incident?
Say again?
The Bank of America ATM over at Galleria with the Glock.
That one I'm unaware of. So you just send me an email and I'll.
It's right in the crime report.
It's in the report.
Yeah.
I read
It's in
about
here?
that.
Yeah.
It's an Estes robbery. It looks like they went up behind someone at the Bank of America
Yes.
with a Glock
Yes.
and told him to give me all your money.
ATM robbery.
Yes.
And that would be within that it's kind of within that vicinity of, it's not too far away from Slauson.
Right.
And same age bracket, same background individual, I believe, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Any other additional questions regarding the information I provided or anything related to?
Yeah, Officer Loster, my wife actually passed me a Facebook post of that, and I guess this person asked Councilmember Obagi that there was a dude with an AR-15 and he tried to hold up a restaurant and he went to the massage parlor and he held hostages. Is that true, or is that like what happened in the incident?
He was just believed to still be inside the building. There was, I think, just one employee at the time, and so there wasn't
Like a
any
hostage
incidents of a
situation.
hostage situation. In regards to the type of gun, it doesn't appear to be a handgun. The picture is in here somewhere if you look. I don't think it's, based on what I see in the picture, I don't know if it's an AR-15. It could be a fake gun. It could be any number of things.
I guess my question was more like, was there like posting, because this stuff was all over the internet, like on Nextdoor and Facebook. Like if there
Yes,
was,
the Nextdoor commentary.
yeah. So like if there was an official channel people can go to get like the real,
that Nixle?
story.
The South Bay Alert, it was formerly known as Nixle. That's
Okay.
like your best bet, because anytime there's a large amount of police, obviously for the safety of the incident, in certain cases or ensuring successful prosecution of a case, we can't reveal certain information at certain times, but typically you can get an idea of something's going on, because we'll be like, hey, there's a heavy amount of police activity, avoid this area.
Okay.
Which is really for the purpose of safety, like in the moment, what you need to know and how to conduct yourself, as opposed to you see red and blue lights going outside your house and you come out and you're like, hey, what's going on? Right, that's not necessarily the safest move if there's some sort of law enforcement safety related issue.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just annoyed by the misinformation that is spread. That's
That
human
people are going to
nature.
speculate no
Talk
matter
about-
what. They're going
yeah,
to post
that's a big
and
deal.
speculate. We stop a guy who's just attempted to kill 3 people and there's 4 cop cars and they're like, why so many cop cars for one guy? It's just speculation. Just do your best to focus on the information that we provide, which is like through that South Bay Alert.
Okay.
And, you can send an email to me. I do my best to stay on top of that stuff and
Sure.
have some answers for you guys. I get inquiries like that all the time. So I'm always willing to help.
Is there a policy posting it through the social media, like the police, Redondo, like social media, like I know you guys are actually dealing with the incident.
I don't think that'll happen in real time.
We are, typically in the middle of an incident, what we're relying on the most is going to be that South Bay Alert.
Okay.
Because it just goes to so many people right to their phones. Obviously, we're out there and people are like, can I go through? And you're like, hey, no, this is closed off. Generally speaking, we do our best to do that. The social media channels aren't quite as effective because, people check that when they have downtime, not necessarily when everything's going on. We are not on Nextdoor. There was a archiving, like a data archiving issue that they've still been trying to kind of work out with Nextdoor for us to have an account again. But we have had one in the past, and then it was discovered that there was a lack of certain level. I'm not an IT guy, but there's a certain lack of archiving ability for the data that comes through that app that the city was concerned about with liability, because we need to be able to recall all the data since we're a public entity and freedom of speech concerns and public records, et cetera.
I guess just my last point on this is that when we see things like, I know that alert that we get, right, just like avoid the area. So that's like kind of like an action item right there. But when a lot of people see these things on social media, then there's not like a place they can go to verify if it's true or not.
Right, they'd have to wait till after the fact when we do a press release or they call, some people call our dispatch center and they're like, hey, what happened?
But is there a way that we can perhaps at least whatever information that is available publicly released to have like an official source, like on, so that when it'll be verified, obviously if you don't.
Our most reliable one so far has been the South Bay alert, the Nixle, basically.
Okay.
That's been our, because it's so easy and it hits everyone's cell phone or emails like right away.
Sure.
But again, in regards to the amount of information that we give out, it's not going to be specific during the onset of an incident.
Sure. Yeah.
If there's some sort of safety issue, yes. Hey, we're looking for someone in this specific area. Please shelter in place. Right? In this case, they believed he was contained in one specific area, right? So, and we don't want to alert somebody who's coming to try and help or disrupt our operation.
Sure.
So we don't want to say, hey, we're trying to get this gentleman to surrender from this building. And he's calling his buddy and the buddy's like, oh, cool, I'm going to go F with them.
Yeah.
And then
Sure. That makes sense.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But the South Bay Alert program, I'll send you, we have a little pamphlet that kind of explains everything, and you just send a text and then you get all the text messages. And we use that for missing persons, major traffic collisions and closures, special event notifications, as well as like public safety type stuff.
And I also have signed up for those for Torrance and Hermosa
Yeah, it's not
and
just,
Manhattan and El Segundo. So I get
I mean,
notices
it goes all the way
around
to
whole
CHP,
area.
has it even. You can sign up for different CHP stations and stuff, and they'll put SIG alerts out and stuff like that.
I have a comment about Nextdoor since that came up
Yes.
to the public. Because I've noticed I get emails from people next door and they're like, there's someone in my front yard and they're hanging out and they won't leave. What should I do? They look like they're homeless and they're asking for opinions from people on Nextdoor. Call the police. Why do you ask for opinions on Nextdoor? Like you get this whole myriad of, I don't go through them most of the time. My response is always, call the police. There's someone on my porch. It looks like they're about to defecate. Call the police. Like they want opinions on Nextdoor. Like that's just ridiculous. And, or I saw somebody, they'll post like someone came up and stole something from my neighbors. Should I tell my neighbor? I saw it on the Ring camera. Call the police. Like it's super simple. Like, why are you asking for community opinion?
I think it just comes from a place of like inconsideration, or ignorance, not inconsideration or I would hope no other, less than pleasant, motivation. I think it's just ignorance and having people like you or people that have been to our Citizens Academy or any people that just in general involve themselves or like, oh yeah, no, this is an issue. We live in a city with a full service police department that will send someone out. Not obviously every single time. We're not Johnny on the spot with lower level issues like that, but typically we have a fast response time and we're dedicated to solving all levels of issues throughout the city. So just keep doing what you're doing, especially since we don't have access to that medium right now.
Well, the drone works very well. Thank you, officer.
The drone does work well.
Yes.
Any other questions on the crime or recent events recap?
I have one more question about the catalytic converter thefts.
Yes.
Have you, in the arrest or the stops or incidents that have happened, is it like, do you think it's individuals or is it a group of people? Is it gangs? Is it from are people local that are doing these thefts? Are they coming in from other locations? Have you information about
Local
that?
in the sense of like
They live in Los Angeles.
Southern California. Yeah, greater Los Angeles area, LA County. It's typically done by a crew of multiple individuals. And it's done typically because it's lucrative. So whether or not it's a crew of gang members doing it for the benefit of the gang, or just a crew doing it because it's lucrative, that would be TBD. I don't know that specific information, but yeah, it's usually done by a group of individuals going out as a crew and committing multiple catalytic converter thefts in one period of time. And yes, they will go to target-rich environments.
And how long does it take to remove a catalytic converter?
I've seen it done in 90 seconds,
Okay.
sometimes
Do
less,
10
I'm
in
sure.
one night easily.
Yeah.
Pick up, what, $20,000? That's a pretty
Yeah.
good stash. I know Hyundai got back to me about what they were doing about catalytic converter improvement, but it would be great to get someone, either a catalytic converter manufacturer or an automotive company, to come to one of these events and tell us what's going on and, give them hell. But we appreciate all the hard work and the legislation, municipal code that we're using to enforce punitive measures on folks that are stealing catalytic converters, and we hope we continue ratcheting up those types of measures. And then I would say that one of my friends from El Segundo mentioned street racing near Raising Cane's in El Segundo. I guess they're coming closer to Redondo. We have a game plan on what we would do in the event that there would be a street race somewhere.
So Redondo was pretty proactive. Our traffic unit coordinated and attended a illegal street racing takeover training that was hosted, I think, by Gardena Police Department for anyone who was interested in the South Bay. So we were involved in that because we want to be prepared for that kind of thing. Any sort of incident that has happened, we've had a heavy response to. Good. So there was one, this was a little while back, but there was an attempt at PCH in 190th, and I think we ended up pulling over that night 7 or 8 cars, citing them up, towing if the circumstances were appropriate for that. So as long as we maintain the reputation that it ain't happening here,
Good.
Or there's going to be a heavy level of consequence, that the idea is obviously that acts as a deterrent for this being a target location for a street takeover like that.
I like the way the Lawndale Sheriffs, the Torrance PD, and Redondo PD work very well together to take care of things. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can I propose a topic for the next meeting in this section? It's unpleasant to talk about, but of course it's everywhere. Just could we given we are the Public Safety Committee, maybe on police protocols on mass shootings and school shootings, given
use
with you.
I actually have some of that right here. So we'll jump right into that. I was speaking with Commissioner Marinelli about this already. So we've been heavily proactive in that for several years now. The city of Redondo Beach has 2 full-time school resource officers. They're in constant contact with our district, and their job is to be on campus several hours of the day. They work the school hours all 5 days a week. So they are in charge of coordinating all the run, hide, fight, or run, hide, distract for the younger kids, trainings for the staff and the children on how to respond to an active shooter. They're working on their update refresher training with the district as we speak for the upcoming school year. We had a donation, I think it was the LA Kings, but it put through the Police Foundation, put a trauma kit in every classroom in Redondo Beach. And obviously we regularly update law enforcement active shooter response training, specifically for law enforcement, and we'll do training on school sites specifically for the purpose of the realism. And I think in winter of this year, we're going to do it. We're going to update it again. And then any information that we get from the district or even a parent regarding an incident of maybe a threat or a certain circumstance that may lead to something like that, it's always taken seriously and fully investigated by the school and us if need be. So we've been pretty proactive on this front for several years now.
Are you
And
guys
then
pretty?
my position specifically, I handle the run, hide, fight training for not just schools, but businesses, churches. I kind of focus more on the commerce side of things for the run, hide, fight training. And anyone that asks will go, I specifically will go to a business with their employees or a church flock or whatever and conduct this for staff or members.
Have you guys been pretty aggressive at enacting the California red flag law?
The city of Redondo Beach specifically, I don't know. I know that California legislature may be, California has fairly strict gun laws as it were already. Specific information regarding what type of, informally named red flag laws, I don't know.
I looked up how, because I was interested in the protocol, a police department can enact it and different parties can go through the court to prevent specific individuals from.
There's
having
circumstances if we're investigating a threat of some kind or a mental health situation where we can confiscate firearms, like for 5150 or any sort of threat relating a firearm, we conduct search warrants. And so if there was a threat of some kind and we conducted a search warrant, we would be, in the investigation of that threat, we would be confiscating any and all firearms, and then there would be a process that they would have to go through to get it back, whether it be related to mental health or any sort of criminal activity.
Can we get someone who can speak to like how to do the red flag law specifically and what powers there are and what specific?
Is that a government agency?
Well, it is passed by California. There is a red flag law where someone can go to the courts and remove guns from a certain person.
Is that prosecutor's office referral to staff, do you think, or I would have to go to somebody to?
You might be thinking like a gun violence restraining order type stuff. That's also would be it would be case by case. So if there was some sort of threat made in some sort of circumstances, yes, there could be a circumstance where they serve somebody with a search warrant or a restraining order of some kind, or do some sort of investigation that involves the confiscation of any firearms in their possession.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a domestic violence arrest, I know, and that there's a prosecution, that they will run an AFS, automatic firearms system, and they'll see if the suspect has firearms. And there's laws in place where once they appear at the arraignment, they have only 24 hours and they're served with a protective order in which to surrender or sell their firearms.
That's been in place for quite a while.
That's been in place for a long time.
Yeah.
And then they're precluded from owning a gun or any kind of firearm for 10 years if it's domestic violence related.
So there's been one, there's been one since 2014, I think it says, and law enforcement officials and close family members can enact it. And I think it recently got expanded to other people can enact it, like employers, coworkers, and teachers. But I think the mechanism behind it, I think if we could get more information on it and,
like how to do it, have somebody come tell us.
Yeah, like how to do it, what are the specific criteria to do it, and maybe publicize how to do it, with schools. I don't feel like a lot of people know how to, teachers can do this, but I don't feel a lot of teachers are enacting this.
So the police department is the enforcement agent in the city.
Yeah.
So if we get involved, we're going to do an investigation, and if there's legal precedent or legal statute that says we are going to confiscate firearms, then we would. So I don't know if maybe you're referring more so to what other people can report.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But obviously, we investigate any sort of serious situation like that with some tenacity to determine the credibility and anything that, because sometimes, kid says something stupid, we investigate, right? And we there's a consensual search of the home and nothing's found, and the kid, end all be all is that the threat wasn't credible, and there's been counseling put in place and assistance and some sort of consequence, whatever that is determined to be. But again, that goes back to, we're going to follow up on any sort of complaint or concern that the school district has, or parents or whatever. And there is I'm sure, a reporting system in place for the school district as well. But anytime anything's brought to our attention, we obviously just investigate it fully and determine credibility.
Do you guys work with the schools closely regarding this, like preventative?
Yeah, like the school resource officers are in constant contact with the administration.
And they report, like, they have a suspicion.
Yeah, so if they had any sort of threat that went to the school district, they would call the school resource officers. We get involved with our resources as necessary, depending on the circumstance. Sometimes it's a vague photo that got shared around and nobody knows who made it. Sometimes it's a very specific statement made by a very specific student, and we investigate that thoroughly as well.
What about social media posts?
That would be like along your lines of like a random posting or something like that, like a photo or something like. But that has been a medium for information to flow, just like a letter would be from back in the day to the school, or a bomb threat letter to the school, which obviously you don't see as much of today. More so, it's the digital communication. But there's means for us to investigate that as well.
Are there mechanisms for other kids at schools who regularly see like a kid's social media and to report that and to escalate
That's
that?
typically how we become familiar, is one kid posts something and everybody sees it and multiple parents find out, multiple parents call the school calls us, and the school, in partnership with us, we investigate the whatever it may be, varying levels of seriousness and credibility, and we see it through.
Do you feel like this process could be optimized a little bit? Because it seems like, kids see it, parents sees it, they call. Like if we could publicize something like a kid, like we can report it directly, or at least, there has to be a filtration system or something, but,
I suppose I would be a rich entrepreneur if I could think of some really good idea. I'm going to keep it to myself and get really rich and get it out to the community. I'm just kidding.
Well, I know other districts are exploring
No,
more
the
preventative
community, I think what it really boils down to is we live in a nice place where, for the most part, the students are good students and they report things like that. And anyone who's trying to post something secretly, social media ain't the way to do it. It's going to get out and stuff's going to the snowball is going to keep rolling and the school is going to find out and stuff. I think the key here is just the communication. And since our communication with the school district is so active, there's really not anything that happens in the school that we don't know about. I mean, within 10 minutes of the school finding out, because the first phone call is usually to one of our school resource officers.
Okay.
Here's kind of an off-the-wall question, literally, but how about door locking and unlocking mechanisms in schools? I know that's kind of wonky and technical, but has there ever been a review of that with all the schools? And I'm not sure what happened in Texas, whether the door was locked or unlocked. I'll have to go through all that, but have we revisited that since that incident?
The conversations being had about
Yeah.
the tactic of students barricading doors and what that would mean to us.
I was to say, with modern technology, it would seem that a teacher could have a button like a judge does, like a panic button, and the door could lock.
During an incident, obviously
Metal
that's,
screen go over the window on the door, that sort of thing. Yep.
The James Bond, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah.
There's a lot of that in my industry, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, the more money, I suppose, on security, the better.
It's good to have these discussions.
But no,
I'm
the
glad you brought
conversation's
this
being
up.
had because
Great.
that was a potential factor was, hey, is this door barricaded? Is it not?
Yeah.
Do we have the means to breach if it's barricaded and there's been already been a compromise by a suspect or anything like that? So yes, the conversation's being had and it's being looked at by the guys that run that training and our tactical teams that kind of handle that business.
I would say what Mike mentioned about RFIs for website improvement, I would have an RFI to all the door, window, and screen and vents and lock companies and see how many you get back with kind of crazy ideas that might be done per door or per entrance system, et cetera, that might make each school a little bit more better protected or better ways to communicate, et cetera. But I'm glad that conversation's being had because what happened in Uvalde.
Yeah, it's happening for us. It's a tactical position. we're going to try and figure out what we're going to do given certain circumstances like that.
Yeah.
And the resources available in the moments of time that an incident happens. In regards to like what's being employed at the school, might be a conversation for like a school,
Yeah, I was wondering,
somebody from the school board or somebody from,
I mean, I have 3 daughters going to all these schools, and like, that's why it's very personal to me and my wife.
And I will tell you, not to interrupt you, but I will tell you, as somebody that travels every week of the year in a different city, we live in a little bit of a bubble regarding some things. Homelessness for us is a huge deal. Some things aren't, but every city that I'm in currently, school safety is at the top of every parent's list.
Yeah.
I have a friend from Chicago, that last shooting in Chicago, like he describes that the PV of Chicago, that's where it was. So
Yeah.
the parade shooting. So it's just, I mean, my wife is terrified, and we have a 8-year-old, a 6-year-old.
thankfully, where you live, there's the high level of collaboration between our South Bay agencies. It's not a rural area where there isn't communication availabilities like there may have been in Texas.
Right.
We have a high level of communication. We have mutual aid plans in place. If there was shooting on a campus, you'd have, 10 to 15 cops in there within 60 seconds, and you'd probably have 100 cops there within 5 or 10 minutes. So that's just a benefit we have kind of where we're at because we've created such a strong mutual aid and police response system in LA County.
Can we invite people from the school? Because I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job, and it would just be
Thank
nice
you.
to hear.
Not me specifically.
It's one of the side
From the
benefits.
school
of
You know what,
district
actually,
police
a little more
response.
information for you here at the lectern. This Lieutenant Corey King was in charge of our programs for a little bit, so he can speak a little bit more to that.
Hi, good evening. Corey King, Lieutenant with our Special Operations. Sir, I could probably answer most of your questions. I was tasked approximately 6 years ago to start active shooter training in our city through Chief Kaufman. And with that, I myself and another officer collaborated with the school district and basically started the Run, Hide, Fight program. I know some of your concerns are the safety issues and the doors and stuff like that. I can tell you right now, your children are probably at one of the safest school districts all around. And my children at the time when I was teaching this were in middle school and elementary school. My kids, don't go to the school district, but everything that I taught the kids here, I taught my own kids. That's how much I believed in what we were doing and so forth. As far as like the safety, you talked about the door latches, stuff that our school district's done that we have in place for the past 6-7 years is all our doors are locked at the school district. So next time you're there, you're going to see these little red latches. So what that enables is in an emergency, all these teachers, all they got to do is just slide the bolt and the door locks. Okay. So what we found out that in a quickly rapid situation, what happens usually to all of us, right? Our brains start melting out of our ears, right? Yeah. So for somebody trying to find the right key to lock the door, that's time. And that's time that we can't have our teachers wasting to protect your children. So the school district outfitted every door in the entire school district with those safety latches. I can tell you right now, I had a meeting last week, and this week we're redoing site assessments. So we've already walked through all the South End schools. On Wednesday, I'll be with the school district, and we're revisiting all the North End schools. Again, we've done all these site assessments, but again, every year we go back and we walk through and figure out, hey, what can we improve? And what's nice is that it's getting smaller and smaller. So the collaboration has been fantastic. The curriculum that the school districts put together is just impressive. And in the lecture that I used to give 6 years ago, we talk about, we look back at how many children died in a school fire in the last 50 years? None. And why is that? Well, look how many fire drills that we've done, right? Yeah. And the change in paints, the sprinkler systems and so forth. So if we talk about, what did people think when we said, hey, we want to start doing fire drills? People were very uncomfortable, right? Unfortunately, in this day and age that we live in, this is something that now we have to address. And it's uncomfortable, but it's reality. Yeah. So the more we train and we start discussing, and like we said, 6 years ago when we started with the kids then, as they go through this, this is just going to be just like, the fire drills, the earthquake drills, and so forth. It's an unfortunate reality, but this is what we live in. I pray to God that this never happens, but if it does, we're ready. And that's one of the things that when I give my lecture, I always ask the teachers, if there was an active shooter that came in right now, what would you do? And then I give my lecture and I go, now that we just had this lecture and we discuss, they got a game plan. And again, we have this curriculum that we put together with a fantastic, with the school board, and it's been completely successful to where I've had multiple other cities, agencies coming and asking, hey, what do you guys got going on? And, here it is. It's all for them. Again, this is an ongoing thing. We're not stopping, but really, you're in really good hands.
Thank you so much. I mean, everything you're saying, is amazing.
Right.
Has it been, since we have so many of these incidents now, has it been tested? When, the schools that have been trained in some of these protocols versus the schools that weren't, when an active shooter happens, has it shown to reduce, loss of life and everything?
Right. So time is everything, right? So, we had the active shooter down on the pier, and our officers addressed that problem and stopped that threat immediately. And there was no hesitation. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, I'm very proud of this agency, and I believe we're very well prepared. Yes, time is everything, and again, that comes with training and education that we're highly involved with at this department.
Thank you.
Let's hope we never have to test the theory to see if it actually works.
I completely agree with you. But again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm glad you happened to be in attendance this evening. You could address
I'm
this.
glad I
Thank
made
you.
it to the meeting. Like I said, this was my baby for the last 6 years, so I'm pretty passionate about it. So again, and I can speak as a parent, if my children went here, I'd be completely confident that they're safe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to readjust my vision here, see where we're at.
We're in J5.
J5, discussion of community policing events. Officer Lofstrom.
Okay. Pretty busy little May and June. We went to the farmer's market, had an additional homeless court. In regards to homeless court, I think the next 3 are going to be hosted in a different South Bay city because the program is expanding. So it was very popular in our initiating onset for that. So it's spreading and it's still a good program. We had a pop-up coffee with the cop on the Esplanade. I'll put this all into one since there's a big list here. But we had snow cones at the summer reading kickoff, and we've been to every child development center for the past few weeks doing pop-up snow cone events and doing little demos and interactions with the kids. We had a pancake breakfast at the Elks Lodge that raised the money for veterans programs. And we had a blood drive on Thursday, July 14th. I didn't beat my record of 36 bags of blood, but I got 23, which has been the highest in their last several drives. So I'm still proud of that. And we had the LA County Police Canine Association Canine Show at the high school this weekend.
Cool.
Upcoming, we will have a coffee with the cop up on the north bike path on that Edison right away on July 30th in the morning from about 8 to 10. The police departments all over the place. We're usually heavily involved in Special Olympics fundraising via the torch run. If you've ever seen that with our officers holding a big group of our officers running through the city with the Special Olympics torch, and we pass it off to another police department. Another program fundraiser they run is called Tip a Cop, where your police officers go act as wait staff and ask for a tip, which is a donation to our Special Olympics. and you get to order us around at a restaurant. So that's pretty fun. We're doing that on July 29th in the morning at Good Stuff in Redondo Beach, which is also my favorite breakfast place. So feel free to come and help us raise money for the Special Olympics. They'll have a couple athletes there to meet and greet with also. National Night Out, we're going to have a centralized event up at Fulton Playfield. Something small, but we wanted to start building up a bigger event for that since it's such a popular nationwide program. And there might be a dunk tank involved. Just going to throw that out there for the lieutenants and captains. We'll be at the Farmers Market again on August 11th. We're going to make an appearance at the Relay for Life. And we're going to join in on the Kiwanis Community Fair on September 10th at Anderson Park.
Just for the record, I spoke with the CEO of the National Association for Town Watch about 3 years ago. And there's somewhere on the East Coast, Massachusetts or Pennsylvania, and they have little award categories for best national night out for mid-sized city on the West Coast. But they say it's free. You submit your little, what you did at Fulton Park or Anderson Park in a little binder that's basically a 5-minute demo of what you did. And then they have a committee that decides who gets that award. But wouldn't it be great to say Redondo Beach has the best, Torrance might have the best Christmas lights, but Redondo Beach has the best national night out. But that was my thought.
I'm getting my feet wet with this one. It does take a lot of resource and planning and stuff. And, without Dinah Larry present, that is a substantial loss, as you guys know very, very well. But I plan to get more heavily involved in that because it is nationwide and it's a big program. So maybe someday I will take home the gold on the Town Watch Awards.
Yeah, 1 year at a time.
One year at a time. Exactly.
Yes, I agree. Great.
But that concludes our community policing report.
Let's go to J6 with volunteers.
Volunteer report. We had 280 hours of service in May for a total of 1,700. Typically slows down a tiny bit in the summer, but we still got up to 250. And again, if you want to take notice to the last three categories there under services that are new: cold cases, administrative, and crime analysis. We're getting a lot of use out of the volunteers in those new categories, which have been extremely helpful to the police department. So I'd like to thank our volunteers for that. And that concludes the volunteers in policing report.
Great. There's a number of referrals to staff. I know there's conversations going on about e-bikes, traffic engineering, and so forth, but let's start with Commissioner Marinelli about anything that we need to refer to staff or have at the September meeting. Go ahead.
So is the September meeting going to include representatives from both the Methodist Church and St. James? Is that what I
would
understood?
make that my, I think there's 3 different churches in South Redondo that are involved with feeding. And I think they also have a breakfast program up north with the Methodist Church, not too far from where I live, but I'm going to aim for 2 or 3 to attend and discuss their procedures and so
We're
forth.
both parishioners at St. James, so I look forward to what they have to say as far as what their schedule is, what their criteria is for feeding the homeless and how that program works. And it seems to be a lot better, smoother, and cleaner than it used to be when many residents and parishioners complained that those folks that were being fed and being taken care of weren't Redondo Beach residents. And it seems now maybe we're trending in that direction.
That
We're
would be a
taking
good
care of our
trend.
own. So I look forward to what they have to say, because I don't know specifically if that's the case, but it seems to be. I would just also like to thank the lieutenant and the command staff, because when I'm home, which is rare, but I'm on the International Boardwalk a lot, and it's nice to see an active police presence through foot patrols, through the parking garage, making sure the ladies that work in the restaurant business and in the bar business feel safe when they're going to their cars at the end of the evening. So thank you very much for stepping up on that regard. That's as much as I have for right now.
Well, Commissioner Marinelli, thank you for your feedback on that. And I know Commissioner Kleinbaum, you had talked to a housing resource in South Redondo that you wanted to bring to speak next meeting?
Yeah, I actually spoke with the owners of the hotel that purchased the hotel. that are converting it to housing for homeless people. I actually spoke with them, and I invited them to a future meeting here at the commission, and they were very amenable to it, and they're looking forward to it. And then actually, they've already spoken to Officer Lofstrom. How do I close the loop, or who closes the loop so that they could give us a brief presentation at our next meeting?
I think you're a really good closer, and I think the loop's already closed for them to appear.
Yeah, if you just confirm that he wants to, we had a conversation prior to you getting in touch with him, because he was looking for something to present community-wise, and I think he found something in Councilman Nierenheim's community meetings at Alta Vista that he was looking for, so he never ended up following up with me, because I kind of explained the Public Safety Commission, what it was and how it operates, and he said, I don't know if that's exactly what I'm looking for right now, let me get back to you, and then you ended up reaching out and mentioning his name, so if he's interested, we'll get in touch with him, and we can put him on the agenda for September.
I just had an idea now. I don't know if this is this the appropriate time to talk about agendizing that subject, or?
I don't have any issue with anything you want to refer to us.
Okay,
Go for
okay.
it.
So there's members of the community have gotten calls that are really upset about having a housing for the homeless here in the city. Okay, and then I think part of it is people like to be part of the solution where they contribute to it. Instead of having it done to them, they want to have some say in what happens in their community, and because they pay the taxes, they live here, and they see it, have to be here with it. And so rather than having it done to us, we want to be part of the solution, or have the opportunity to do that. And then what can we as a community or as a commission do to make that better? Like, for example, I think that the community should have some say in the use of that property, something, or some contribution, or there's a board of directors or members of the board that run that show, okay? And maybe people in our community should be a part of that. And the residents should have some say also, on the use of that property, which what they've told us is the law allows them to just go buy it and we can't say anything. Well, maybe the law allows it, and that's true. But the right thing, I'm sure they wouldn't even object, because they need our support from the community so things go smoother and work better. And then also the community would be happier, and you wouldn't get so much opposition, and we'd all work together as a team than fighting each other.
Are we able as a commission individually, et cetera, on social media to say after we receive the agenda, Officer Lofstrom, to say we're having a public input meeting for the housing unit and the feeding stations at the Public Safety Commission scheduled for such and such a date?
Inviting people to come speak.
Yeah, and even better, maybe we could release the agenda or have that invitation a month in advance of the meeting rather than 2 or 3 days before, but wanted to get your feedback on that.
Well, the meetings are publicized and open to the public. In regards to preparing let me just say also, September is the onset of monthly meetings again, and not bi-monthly.
Oh, wow.
So we'll be meeting every third Monday of every month. So I don't, logistically speaking, with the city clerk staff, I'm pretty new to this when it comes to the agenda and all the parliamentary procedure. I don't know if it's feasible to produce an agenda a month in advance.
Yeah.
Well, and in combination with the fact that we are going to go to monthly, so it would just be each month the topic would come up again anyhow. But the meetings are open to the public.
I think we should probably talk to that council member, right? Didn't he have
I know
a
that
meeting? And
Councilman Nierenheim has been pretty proactive in trying to address the circumstances, and he's having the town halls and et cetera. So there is a line for direct communication also with him to see maybe what he could use from the Public Safety Commission in regards to that particular topic, because it is a sensitive topic for that district in particular.
Can we invite a council member to the meeting?
I'm certain you could.
I also think we need to be cognizant of agendizing so many things, because we don't want to be here till 11 o'clock if we've got 5 different sets of presentations. And
We are going to go monthly in September. So right now we have potentially the churches and then maybe this gentleman. I don't know if you want to wait until the following month for the churches and prioritize this. It's up to you, obviously, but September 19th, is the next meeting, and there is a couple things on the docket here with the churches, so if you didn't want to combine it.
When's the decision have to be made on housing, or when is it going to be fully implemented, the
That I
action?
don't know. Police department.
They told me they were already starting construction before our next meeting.
So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have both the churches and the owners come at the same time. I'm just saying if that's what we're going to agendize or ask for a referral to staff to get it on the calendar,
Yeah.
that we don't add one more thing to the calendar and other referrals should wait because we're going to be going monthly. Because otherwise we're going to be here
Yeah,
all night.
I
Because
agree.
that's a hot topic. We might have a full audience. There might be a lot of people that want to speak.
And if the commission's not meeting until after there's a certain onset of progress in the project, then I would recommend reaching out directly to the council.
okay. I would be delighted to have both in September, and there's some other topics that Commissioner Hannon and I have talked about, maybe move that to October meeting. We don't, so I don't know if we need to vote on anything, but I would be for having both the churches and the housing unit in September.
I want to propose them.
I don't think we need to vote on it, but I think it's a good idea to have both because we're going to have both perspectives because you have the churches that are bringing in the homeless community and then you have the other folks that are actually going to potentially be housing these same homeless. It'd be
Lots
interesting.
of questions can be answered at one time if we have it that way.
I think so too.
Absolutely.
Very
And
good.
then
If you're okay with maybe what your idea was for September, if we do it in October, or do you have something that's timely that needs to be, whatever it has.
Commissioner Kleinbaum, can you pass the baton to Commissioner Hannon?
Sure, if you pass it
Great.
back, because I wanted to say something, but go ahead.
Anyway, I'd like to, before we move on, I'd like to make sure you speak to Niels, and, he's also Mayor Pro Tem right now, as well as city council member for that district, so he could shed a lot of light of what's being done, latest status, and I think he should be in there, or at least agree with us.
Well, maybe we can reach out and invite him to the meeting because he has another perspective because he's already been speaking to the community and having folks at Alta Vista talk about this issue. Just in case to answer questions or, I don't know.
He should be part of the discussion.
I think so too.
Just another comment I wanted to make, the subject matter at these last few meetings, including today, are absolutely fascinating, okay? And I'm sure that there's a broad range of people in the community that would be very interested in seeing what's going on here. And somehow we need to do like a better job of advertising what we do so the public's aware and has an opportunity to attend.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with you.
Well, that's why we need the social media.
It sure beats watching C-SPAN. Commissioner Hannon?
Yeah, I think everybody knows I'm president of a coalition that advocates for safer people that participate in active transportation, which are runners, walkers, bicyclists, and basically everybody that's not in a car. I've been bombarded the last 3 or 4 months at least. We represent 15 cities in the South Bay, basically. Police departments have contacted me and just said, the sidewalk riding is really become an issue with seniors, people handicapped, and, the nice, quiet sidewalks have seemed like they've disappeared because of e-bikes. I just wanted to remind everybody that e-bikes are in fact bicyclists. If they're a class 1 or class 2, they are considered a bicyclist, so they're basically supposed to abide by all the rules that bicyclists are supposed to abide by. But what that means is that when I looked at the city ordinance for sidewalk riding, first of all, California, and I believe it was in the 50s, decided that each municipality or each city in the state of California should come up with their own bicycle riding on sidewalks. And each one of them have. And I've looked at about 60 of them in LA County just to get a feel for maybe what the best policies for each state. And I've come up with some information that might be helpful, but what I'd like to do is try to ask for your help in taking a look at our current bicycles sidewalk riding code, which I think was generated in 1954, and then it went back in 1977, upgraded and included rollerblades and other small wheeled devices, and but nothing's been updated since 1977. Well, then we have e-bikes, we have e-scooters, we have all these e-micro devices, and we don't have the infrastructure for them, and we don't have the rules. And basically, if you're on an e-bike, you can basically ride a class 1, class 2 e-bike on a sidewalk where it's not prohibited. Now, you think, well, that's pretty good protection. We can put out signs wherever we don't want people to ride. But the reality is, in fact, there's very few places that have such a sign. So, and the fact is that they go 20 to 25 miles an hour. They weigh a lot more than a regular bike. If they hit you, you've got the inertia behind it and the motor, and it's going to do a lot more damage. And if you get hit with a car at 25, quite honestly, it's probably not going to be as damaging or more damaging certainly than being hit by an e-bike. But the fact is, those e-bikes are weighing 60 and 70 pounds, and they hurt, especially when you're older and already handicapped. And so I think it's time to go back and revisit the city Redondo Beach code and update it and include these types of micro technology that are driven by an engine. I can help if you'd like.
No, yeah, I are you asking for my help as the liaison or because I'm a police officer?
I think it should come from the police. I mean, I think it'd be, I did talk to Niels, I talked to a couple of city council, and they would definitely, they feel like this is the right avenue and they definitely would support it. So
There's definitely a high amount of attention on e-bikes and bicycle safety. The police department is rolling out bicycle safety programs. We had, you more aware of that? The Captain Naylor's bike safety program?
Yes, Commissioner Hannon. So I also oversee our traffic bureau, and currently our traffic bureau is putting together an e-bike education. So obviously we've seen an explosion in these e-bikes, and you know, if you were to ask me, you know, in my 26 years in law enforcement, what does this rule say for this? I don't know. I mean, things are constantly changing, as you know, with technology and so forth. But in regards to the e-bike, we are currently putting together an education where we go out first, educate, and vast majority is these kids that we're seeing riding, right? The teenagers. And if you were to go up to the high school come, you know, when school gets back into session, the amount of e-bikes that are up there is incredible. So unfortunately, when you give a teenager a bicycle that's can go, you know, 20, 25 miles an hour versus 8 to 10 miles an hour when we used to pedal bicycles, there's an issue. So we're currently putting together a program to address it, starting with education and then going into enforcement.
Well, I've been working with.
Sorry, if I could just add also, that would be what's already in existence for what's in place legislation-wise right now. So prohibitions on the pier, the Esplanade sidewalk, and I think some of the sidewalks near Betts Park where riding a bike on the sidewalk is prohibited, but not just that, but stop signs, left turns, any roadway violations that are already in place in the California Vehicle Code, not anything specific or new legislation that prohibits e-bikes on the bike path or something like that. That would be a city council matter in the creation of new legislation to prohibit, specifically regulate e-bikes in some manner or another.
Okay, all right, so I'll take that back to city council then and see what they say. I'm sorry I didn't want to respond to you. I would like to help with that. I am a USA cycling coach. I'm a cycling instructor. I'm also a youth bike education instructor, and I've been working with the city of Redondo Beach for at least 5-6 years in all the schools, by the way, in the district. So I know there's a lack of education out there, and certainly, it's part of that three-leg stool. We need enforcement, certainly. We need education, certainly. We need infrastructure to resolve this. But the fact is that education is a key point in this, and we, as a coalition, are also putting together a website that we're going to have videos. We're going to have a lot of information on it, and rather than have two sources of information, I'd really like to work with the city and make sure that we get it down to one, and one that's very good and really teaches the kids how to ride a bike safely.
No, completely agree with you. Yes, definitely. Let's make sure, reach out to our traffic unit and we can collaborate and put something together. It'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
And I know I talked to Assemblymember Mertsucci's office about it, and they wanted an update. So this will be good, multiple levels.
I've got meetings with Mayor Succi and Janice Hahn and a few other people too.
Yep, great. Commissioner Gupta.
So I do have a call to action as well. I don't know what meeting, but I have two separate topics. So the one is, I do think it would be worth it for having representatives from the school district to know what preventative, I know you guys are doing an excellent job, but as a public safety commission, I think it's our duty to keep trying to figure out how to optimize it even further. And also maybe a legal expert on the red flag law, how to enact it, because I don't think there's a lot of knowledge on it. Even when I look online, it's done by different law firms that talk about how to enact it. But maybe having the school district also hear from a legal expert in the red flag law to see what tools are available to us and to them and to various parties in the community, if there's any suspicion. So how do we go about setting that up?
It sounds like a good meeting topic for October, I think.
Well, it might be helpful too,
Right.
if you wanted to reach out to them as
Yeah,
well,
that's
it
what I was
might be.
thinking. Yeah.
And see if you want to invite the school board member, the school district, or Dr. Keller to come.
Yeah, that would be a good contact.
Conversation about how they do it from the school perspective versus from the law enforcement
Yeah.
perspective.
That would be great.
Because I think we've given Officer Lofstrom a lot on his plate.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. So I'll try to.
For you guys.
He does have a full-time job.
Can you pass me the contact or?
Sure.
Okay. So I think that'd be a good meeting to have both those types of people at the same meeting.
Red flag, and the other one is
Yeah.
school safety.
Yeah, like the
Okay.
school district. And so they can also learn about the red flag law and how to enact it and
And
stuff.
it's good to have crossover communication with the police department too.
Yes,
Yep,
yeah.
very good.
So that's one meeting. Sorry, I have another one too.
Sure.
Is just with Chief Yang, I think I would like to, work on continuing that process that the Little Company Mary and Torrance Memorial we're talking about, and trying to, employ, because I'm a hospitalist, I have a lot of familiarity with the stuff, to maybe, talk to that private company and try to see what opportunities there are to work with them.
More than happy to do that. After the presentation, we did have a debrief out in the lobby. So there's a lot of energy to keep this going. Absolutely. So.
Thank you for bringing all those folks and those doctors. They're just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
It was good stuff. Thank you.
You will each have an extra full-time job on your plate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief Yang.
Sure, my pleasure.
Maybe we can touch base at some point.
Absolutely.
Can open that. Okay.
I have no referrals. I think we're full.
Thank you for managing our flock, Commissioner Kulig. I move this to be a meeting to be adjourned. I wish everybody a wonderful evening, and see you in a couple months.
You're doing a great job as chairman.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It was a good meeting.
We need a gavel.
Yeah.
We do need to, what happened to the gavel?
We still have a gavel. What happened to the gavel?
What happened to the device that you rather than raise your hand, push a button anyway?
There used to be a